Hello everybody, thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Joanna. I'm assuming that you've read the God Delusion, you're familiar with it, or you're interested in it in some way. Well, so am I. I read it last year, and as I read it, I thought of questions that I wanted to ask, and even some I wanted to answer. I just tend to think and reason in questions and answers. I put them to Professor Dawkin himself in an email, but not surprisingly I didn't get an answer. I'm sure he has better things to do with his time than answer 19-year-olds. So then I thought, is there some other place I could put these ideas and queries? I put the question to Yahoo Answers, and someone suggested a YouTube video. I thought, great idea. After all, I'm asking for your opinions, and who doesn't like to give his opinion? And while I'm at it, I thought I would answer, to the best of my humble ability, some of the questions that were raised in the book, in case anybody else is wondering the same thing that the author wrote. Okay, so in the preface, Professor Dawkins commented on the habit of talking about Muslim children or Catholic children, etc. He said there's no such thing, because a young child isn't capable of deciding for himself what he believes. But isn't it a question of who has the right of definition? For example, according to Islam, you are a Muslim if A, you were born into a Muslim home and you never denounce Islam, or B, you choose to become one as an adult. So according to their definition, they do have Muslim children. Also, don't some people use the term Muslim child or Hindu child or whatever to indicate that the child's way of life is Muslim, or Hindu, or whatever? I mean, love it or hate it, religion and lifestyle usually go together, often enough being interchangeable. So in that sense, it would be true to say that there's a Muslim child, or a Hindu child, or whatever. Oh, and I feel I should point out that while most belief systems lump the children with the parents, Biblical Christianity, which by the way is distinct from Catholicism, is the exception. Nobody is considered a Christian unless he or she is old enough to understand what being a Christian actually means and chooses to accept that. Anyway, in Chapter 1, Professor Dawkins raised the question of why religions should get special treatment. I have to admit, my first thought was, first I've heard of it. But as I read further, I could see what he meant. For example, it's easier to be a conscientious objector if you can cite religious reasons for it. Also, when someone criticizes a religious belief, someone else is bound to say that the person should be more tolerant or respectful. Whereas, if someone criticizes the food at the restaurant, or a movie or a play, nobody has a problem with it. So yes, I suppose religions are given special treatment, and why is a fair question. I view it as a matter of simple courtesy. Someone's religious beliefs are his most cherished beliefs, usually. Nobody likes to see his most cherished beliefs carelessly ridiculed, and so they don't do the same to others. Now, obviously nobody has to extend that courtesy to others, but I don't think it's unreasonable for people to find a total disregard for their most cherished beliefs somewhat lacking in good form. What do you think? Now, I couldn't help but wonder why Professor Dawkins began Chapter 2 the way he did. He said he was going to talk about the general idea of God, and then he began talking about the God of the Bible. Now, I know he said that they're all the same, because they're all made up. But my question to you is, what does that have to do with it? I've heard people compare the characters in the Hunger Games to the characters in Twilight, but I've never heard anyone suggest that the characters are exactly the same, even though they're both made up. But I've heard more than once the idea that all gods are the same, they're all made up. Like, if you can just demonstrate that ideas aren't true, the differences between them don't exist. Or if you can just show that a bunch of ideas are similar, that somehow proves that none of them are true? Seriously, how does that work? Okay, next question. Professor Dawkins said the existence of God can be determined scientifically. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't science deal with what we can observe? And isn't God by definition a spirit, and therefore not observable? So wouldn't God be outside the realm of science? Not going against it, mind you, just outside of it. Like, you can't use the rules of grammar to determine the topography of Europe. But that doesn't mean denying the usefulness of grammar altogether, and it doesn't mean topography breaks the grammatical rules. Likewise, how can we use science to determine the existence of a spirit? Scientific laws are valuable for science, but that doesn't mean we can use them for everything. What do you think? Professor Dawkins also took issue with the idea that science can't answer the question of why. But he himself never did answer the question of why. Why anything? He asked why theologians should be given such respect. But the fact is that they try to answer questions that scientists won't go near. That doesn't prove theologians are right. In fact, they can't all be right. But do you guys honestly think it makes sense to say that a group of people, that is theologians, are all definitely, absolutely wrong when they answer questions that scientists can't? Finally, Professor Dawkins said, quite correctly, that it doesn't make sense to believe in God simply because someone suggested it and we can't disprove it, any more than we should believe in a flying teapot just because we can't disprove it. The thing is, nobody does believe in God just because someone suggested it. There is a reason. Professor Dawkins talked about the logical reasons in the next chapter, and he touched on historical reasons in chapter 5. But he never offered the slightest explanation for how the belief actually began. So my question to atheists, I guess, is, how did the belief actually start? See, if you can answer that and explain how or why the thinking it was based on is incorrect, well, then we can have an interesting discussion. Well, that's all, folks. I really want to know what you're thinking, so if you're interested, leave a comment. Agree, disagree, tell me what you're thinking. I really want to know. All I ask is that you refrain from swearing, name-calling, or insults. Thank you for watching.